Well, the Citibank has asked the Competition Tribunal not to make public the final amount that the bank will have to pay for its role in the forex trading cartel. This emerged at the Commission Tribunal's hearing into the fairness of the Commission's recommendations that during the bank that had admitted to its role in the forex scandal.
Now, Citibank will also act as witness in the prosecution of other banks. The Commission found that 18 banks, including Citibank, Standard Bank, Absa and Barclays Capital, had agreed to collude on prices for bids and offers for US dollar-rand spot trades. The collusive practice started in 2007.
The law allows for the parties to claim certain information to be confidential. And if that information has not been ruled not to be confidential, so we cannot disclose it. So we disclose it if they agree to us disclosing. So in this case, we have not dealt with the fact that indeed it is confidential or not, but the fact that there's a claim for confidential is there, and we had to respect that. Percentage of the fund, it was not a problem to disclose. What we said is that by disclosing it, it's going to make it easy for anyone to work out how much is Citi generating in the country. So we can disclose the percentage, but the percentage will simply, you rework it, it will give you how much they are doing per year in South Africa.
Group. It's incorporated under the company laws of the United States of America. It's based in New York, and then it records Citibank as a foreign bank that conducts the business of a bank in South Africa through a branch called Citibank NA South Africa, which is the authorized dealer in South Africa. So Citibank NA is the cited party because it is the operative arm. As I understand it, Citigroup's Global Markets is a subsidiary of Citibank NA that doesn't conduct trades of this kind.
Well, the Citibank deal raises several key questions. By cutting deals with guilty banks, are we letting the culprits get away with a slap on the wrist?
Shouldn't hawks open cases against banks, traders and their bosses to determine individual guilt?
And is it not time that SARB governor and the CEOs of implicated banks resigned for taking moral responsibility?
Well, Clive Ramatibela-Smith, the ANN7 business editor, joins us on this discussion. A very warm welcome to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Now, do you think that this is a slap on the wrist? 10% for a big bank such as Absa, Standard Bank, etc., is literally a dent in what they can...
I'm going to repeat what they said. They said they can confirm that it's not exceeding 10%. Mm-hmm. So we don't know. It could be far less. It could be 1% for all we know. Mm-hmm. But the point I'm trying to say is that, well, the settlement has been done. It is there. It is 69 million. And obviously, people are upset about the realities of what it actually means, not just to the banking sector in general, but to the ordinary people who would have been affected by the fixing of our currency, particularly over such a long period of time. I can tell you now the impact will be significant. If it was over a year, maybe 2 years, you can argue, but I mean, it goes back to 2007. So the question then, what you were asking, the answer is yes. It does feel like it's a slap on the wrist, and it does feel like it still opens a gap for others to actually do similar things in the future, despite the fact that we know there's been a law that was passed by President Jacob Zuma last year in April that these kind of things will be criminalized now. So there will be some sort of sentence that is linked with this kind of activity. However, with that said, I still feel that there's not enough boundaries that have been put to protect, particularly not just the country, but the sector in general, is still very easy to get in and out and play mouse with these particular games that the banks have been playing. So it's a very difficult one. Also, what you don't want to do, you don't want to create a situation where a reputable bank like Citibank ends up now having to leave South Africa because of hefty fines. You know, you want to have an open market. That's what we've signed up for. So we expect these things to happen, but you know, when they happen illegally, then we have a problem.
Well, here's a question that I want to know, and I'm sure most people are curious as well. Why has Citibank asked the tribunal not to disclose the amount of fine that they have to pay? I mean, I'm sure people want to know. This is a bank that is benefiting from South Africans that are using this institution. They want to know if they have, done something wrong. What is the penalty?
Well, let's look at the makeup of what Citibank really is in terms of the trading that they do on the South African in the South African context. The South African business is a very small business compared to what they have globally, in terms of both assets and trading surplus that they have. So by disclosing, they would be forced, obviously, the operations runs, they are linked to the mother company, which is in the United States. So revealing how much of a turnover they do here in South Africa would involve a system where they would actually expose even how much the rest of the banks or the exposure of the bank has in the rest of the world. So that would seemingly be unfair. Perhaps maybe the Competition Commission could say, well, we understand what you're saying, so it makes sense. So that's probably the reason why. But is it a good enough reason? And maybe that's what we're trying to get to. Yeah. No, it's not, because it is a crime, whether or not we call it a collusion, as it were. However, it is wrong, and by law it's defined as illegal. And so therefore, when somebody is found guilty, I suspect that you wouldn't have much of a movement in the rights of what kind of punishment or what kind of rights
you should have.
Exactly. So in this particular case, I think you're quite correct. I mean, they should be able to reveal to us to what extent this had contributed, because evidently it's not the South African wing that benefited. It's the global company itself that benefited from what they did. So yeah, very, very true. But by the way, they deal with institutions, so there was no. Technically, you can't say there was an individual that got affected, but institutions that use it, for example, pension funds, sovereign funds, and banks as well. Other banks use that platform to exchange and trade in terms of Forex. So there's a number of institutions that would have been affected by that.
Now, there's been talks of nationalizing banks just to make it sort of secure for the common people. What kind of effects would this would have, should this even come about?
South Africans, we are very reluctant to talk about these things, and we're always quick to say, look what the government has done. It's left this and unturned, and we forget the good things that governments can do. In actual fact, in the world, very few countries that you will find that don't have a state-owned bank. It's something that is very popular. It's something that countries do, particularly protect the right and the control of their currencies, utilizing the central bank as a backbone to support the kind of banking that they do in that particular country. So I'll give you an example. So we've got the African Development Bank on the African continent. We've got the Development Bank of South Africa, DBSA. So we've got the central bank, which is South African. We've got so many elements in terms of banking structures that we already have in place. We can even include the post office, even though they have only 6.5 million clients. So where would it go wrong? How could we fail to have a state-owned bank? It does not make sense to me. It sounds like a natural idea that should happen. The question is, who's going to run it? It's the state, so therefore you shouldn't worry, and they can take full responsibility for whatever takes place within that banking sector. If you look at economies like China, for example, they drive heavily on banks that are owned by the state. If you look at the UK, they've got state-owned bank. America's just got a state-owned bank. So it's very strange that people will be jittery that South Africa, which is regarded as one of the top 10 exchange trading countries, that it's not able to have its own bank. So I want to blow those particular doubts away.
Well, just going back to the Competition Tribunal hearing, Clive, the juicy part, what happens to the other banks that have been found guilty? I know Citibank obviously had, they had participated and they had given the evidence with regards to this case. What happens to them now?
You see, that's the trick. So Standard Bank came out and said they have investigated and they don't see anything that is untoward, that is wrong, that they've done. And that's fine, that's all right. But now there's a problem, you see, and this is where we'll see if Standard Bank is legit about what they're saying. Citibank is saying that remember I said they use institutions and other banks to trade for. That means if they're going to be disclosing this information to the Competition Commission, they will expose each and every one of the banks that participated with them in what they did. So ultimately what's going to happen, whether you've spoken or you've come out or not, you will therefore be exposed if you dealt with Citibank. And I can tell you, as a global competitor, Citibank would have used a number of the South African platforms to be able to do what they did.
Yeah.
And so therefore, that information that you are asking about will be made available to the Competition Commission. And if indeed those who didn't come out and they believe that they've done the right thing, they are found to be clean, and which is quite strange because the Competition Commission would not put you up for tribunal
in the first
if
place.
they don't feel that you should
Absolutely.
be. So my answer to you is, I hope for, and they say touch wood, they say all sorts of things, but I hope that in Standard Bank's case that they have the dots, the T's crossed and their I's dotted. So if that's not the case, they will be exposed and they will be having a heavier fine than what Citibank is going to be paying.
Right, Clive, thank you so much.